to North Shore Live Cooper's Corner. We're live this evening, and this is February the 19th, 2014. And I hope that you are boating well with all the snow that we've had. And now today was a wonderful day, and now the snow is melting, but don't get your hopes up too high. It's still February, and the prognosis is more snow. And I don't know where all this water is going to go. I just hope that it doesn't wind up in basements and flood out streets and whatever, cause other problems that are totally unnecessary. Anyway, we want to tell you that I do have a YouTube at the bottom, as you see here. I have a program on YouTube, so please help yourself and connect. It's www.youtube.com, North Shore Live, and the CC is Cooper's Corner. So North Shore Live, Cooper's Corner. And I hope you enjoy it. We have wonderful programs on, and with your information that you give us and the people that we have on, it's most interesting and most educational, and I hope that it opens your mind to important things that we do have on the program. And this evening, because February is Black History Month, we need to let the youngsters know out there is hope, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there are professions that these youngsters can go into besides doing drugs. All the kids are doing drugs. We need to give them a hand up to show that, yes, there is a future. And Larry Chambers is our guest for this evening. And Larry is a licensed financial professional. And we're going to introduce him to you directly. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. But first, this is Larry Chambers. Welcome, Lair.
Thanks, Bev. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And you have some warm hands. That's because it's 40 degrees outside, not below zero. But, that'll happen again. I don't know if that Neapontet, whatever that squirrel's name is, whatever. If
Punxsutawney Phil?
Yeah, if he saw a shadow or whatever. But I do know that we're going to get some more snow. Mm-hmm. I hope it's not a lot, though. Difficult to drive in, you know that.
I know. We still have 29 more days of winter.
And, I don't like that. And not only is it snow on the top, but it's ice underneath.
Right.
Driving is treacherous, just treacherous. So,
absolutely.
Well, let me give you some information here about this gentleman that's on our program this evening that I'm so proud to have. And this is Larry Chambers. And Larry, his primary profession is that he's a licensed financial professional. And he educates people on money-related issues and helps them save for retirement and manage their retirement assets once they stop working. He also helps people get on the path to do financial independence by helping them get out of debt and reduce their cost for life insurance. He also teaches people to do what he does outside the law office, which is all good. His personal family story is one rising from poverty to middle class in Gary, Indiana. He's earning a BS degree in industrial management from Purdue University, then to go on to earn his master's degree in business from Indiana University Northwest. And his parents migrated to Gary from Greensboro and Tuskegee, Alabama in the mid-50s. His family has always stressed education, and his mother finished her BS degree in her mid-30s by sending Larry and his two sisters to live with his aunt in Rhode Island, while she went back as a full-time student for a year at Tuskegee. on Black history, it was long ignored and became part of the new curriculum when Larry returned to an all-Negro black, it's black yet not African-American, middle school in Gary, Indiana, coming from an all-white elementary school in Smithfield, Rhode Island. The new texts were hot off the presses in paperbacks and introduced Larry and everyone around this time frame in our history class. None of this information could be found in then the traditional hardbound text history books. He was still fascinated that this history, Black history, could be new, while we all know that it's been concealed to promote other agendas. This is true. Larry's grandfather walked from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to fight for Larry's civil rights, and other cousins and aunts and uncles did their part in the social structure to achieve something close to level the playing field for Larry and his descendants. And this is wonderful, Larry, because a lot of people take this for granted, that it's just there, but they don't understand that there was a struggle. There was an absolute struggle, color barrier struggle, and it was separation, not because one was better than the other. It was because one was different than the other, and the difference was in their appearance. And so this evening we are so happy to have you here to inform the viewing audience of what you went through, because you're a young kid yet, but the fact that you learned information from your grandparents. And in the control room, could you bring that picture up so we could see the picture of Larry's grandparents? There you be. There's your grandmother and grandfather.
Right. Those are my maternal grandparents who lived in Greensboro, Alabama, and they were born before the turn of the other century. They're both deceased now, but I was lucky enough to know them all the way up to my preteens and get to learn a bit about them and what they built.
Well, you can mention their names.
So Robert Burroughs and Leela Burroughs. Those are my mother's parents.
Did they have a big family?
Absolutely, they had a big family. On my mother's side, there were, I was counting that out, as 8 brothers and sisters.
Wow, okay.
On that side, but on my father's side, there were 12 brothers and sisters. So between the two families,
big families.
I've got 20 aunts and uncles and
nice.
A lot of cousins.
Nice, very nice. Okay.
One thing I want to correct, my
Sure.
father was actually living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama when they got married, not Tuskegee.
Oh, Tuscaloosa.
The connection to Tuskegee was that's where my mom went to school, and they met and fell in love, and she quit school, quit college, before she actually finished her degree. She was pretty close, but they decided to start a family, and after they got married, they migrated up to, they were part of the Great North Migration to
Sure.
the industrial shores of Gary, Indiana.
What a place to go, but goodness sakes. But I give you, your family, and your descendants, and those that came before you a lot of credit, because these were hard times, Larry, very hard times. And to come with family, even if it was one, but to come with more than that, to locate a place for living, to make a future, to make a life, to go to school, to educate the children.
Right.
This is very difficult, very, very difficult.
It was a difficult thing. It would have been more difficult if they didn't have the supportive family. My father's family, actually, the older siblings went to Gary before him, and they had actually established businesses in the Gary area. My Aunt Lydia recently passed away, owned a beauty salon in Gary. I had an uncle who owned the Chambers Restaurant, also in Gary, Indiana. So they were able to make a little money so that when their siblings came up, they could offer them a little support as they got established.
And and to go into business, that's good too. I mean, they weren't just working for people; they took the bull by the horns, so to speak, opened up their own establishments,
Right.
so that they would be part of the community. That's
Right.
good.
On both sides of the family, they were raised on farms. They grew up on farms, so it was a life of hard work. And we are talking a lot about education now, but education for them was a lot different than my experience was. My aunt recently told me that in Greensboro or Bay Spring, Alabama, a nearby suburb, their instructor at the elementary school, which was a one-room, all grades in one room, the teacher only had a sixth grade education. And that was their teacher, that was their educational resource. So my mom and her sister, Hattie Burroughs and Hattie Porter now, went to live with my Uncle Allie in Rhode Island, who had gone there, and that's where they graduated from high school, Hope High School in Providence, Rhode Island.
Did they stay there, or everybody?
So my Aunt Hattie stayed there and married, and my mother went back to Alabama, and that's when she went into Tuskegee.
So the family didn't all congregate in Gary, Indiana. Then I mean,
No, that was my mom's side of the
Yeah.
family. They went in different directions,
Yeah.
Cincinnati and also Detroit. But I also have aunts in California, as far away as that West
Wow.
Coast.
Wow. Well, they're not suffering from the snow, I can tell you that much.
That's
but
true.
unfortunately, they've got drought out there, from what I hear.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Mother Nature, you can't play around with Mother Nature.
No, you cannot.
No, she knows what she's going to do. So, but we're more than happy to give California some of our snow and all of our water, because come the spring and summer, we're going to really be inundated with mud and floods. So, we should talk about some information that our viewers can secure. They're going to get information from you, and what it was like growing up and going to the school and learning, because learning was different in the days that your mom went to school,
Right.
as opposed to when you went to school.
Right. So education was always important in our family, even though they had modest beginnings. They stressed it on both sides of the family. You know, go to school. I only knew one path, and that was that I was going to college. I didn't know what college I was going
Just
to.
go, yeah.
But and that was pretty consistent across my generation of cousins. We pretty much all went to different universities,
Terrific.
some far away, some local community, but everyone saw our previous generation, how they, did the extra effort to make sure that they got the education. My mother going back later after I was almost 10 years old, to finish her education. It left a big impression on my life. It also changed my perception of the world, because growing up in Gary, it was increasingly more not segregated. It became an all-black city. And so that was my experience in school. And to be transplanted into Smithfield, Rhode Island, where it was my two cousins had broken the color barrier, and me and my sisters were, the third, fourth, and fifth black people to actually go to those schools. but it wasn't as frightening as as you might think it was.
Okay.
It was almost matter of factly that we were accepted, and never. I can't really say that I ever had any problems with any kind of racism or anything like that. So I got to see that people were just people,
And education is education.
and education
And
is education.
they have to teach it so everybody gets to learn it.
Right.
So, and that's important.
I was also fortunate because I had an aunt who was a PhD in education, and she actually was one of the first women to graduate from Northern NIU.
Northern Illinois University.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was the president of the school board there in Gary, Indiana.
Gary. Now that's
So
interesting.
that was one of our role models.
Wow, very good. You know, having a large family has its pros and cons. The best part of that is that one gets to see the other how they succeed, and nothing is better than success. And they can see that if Uncle Joe did it, well, I'm going to do it too, and it couldn't be that difficult that I couldn't get in. And it's very important to be a professional in this day and age. We're in the 21st century, Larry, and I have to tell you, there are kids out there that have no idea what reality is. They have no idea what they're going to do for a living. And when push comes to shove, now they've got drugs that are being sanctioned okay, and they're getting high, they're reckless driving, they're causing problems. They're not in school where they should be. The color barrier is broken. Why aren't they in school?
The answers to that are beyond me. I imagine that they vary. I have two children who are in the Deerfield Public School System or went through the Deerfield Public School System. And actually, my son is a junior in high school, so he's still working his way through. But my daughter graduated with honors and went on to Iowa State University, earned her degree in industrial engineering, is now working as an industrial engineer in Columbus, Ohio. But drugs for them has never been something that I needed to lecture about. I think they run a very good program in our school system here, which is the DARE program. And my kids really weren't interested in even like touching alcohol. Well, now that my daughter's 21, I mean, the story's a little different, but still, within control. But my son just abhors the culture of drugs. And avoids that circle.
If they see it in the house. Now, my dad was a smoker. There were three of us. I have two older brothers who were in the military, and myself. And I was the youngest. And my dad used to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. And my mother did not smoke. But my father alternated from cigarettes to a pipe, back and forth. We did not smoke. He never told us we shouldn't.
Right.
But we just didn't. I mean, there was no draw to it. And we were in the house when he was smoking his pipe or his cigarettes. So it didn't.
Well, smoking is a drug. Tobacco is a drug. And many people engage in that. Both my parents smoked, and I never really smoked until I got to college because it was a cool thing to do. Okay. And I could put those cigarettes down at any time. But 19 years later, I was still. It was when I finally kicked the habit, and that was probably for more prodding for my kids. So than it was anything else.
Well, my older brother, when he went into the Navy, so that's when he picked up the smoking. It was after high school, though. He enlisted right at that point. And my other brother, who became a dentist, he didn't smoke per se, but he wanted to look cool, and so in the Navy, he'd have a cigarette in his mouth. The filter, was Cools, the
Right.
menthol,
Right.
and so he would, just roll around in his mouth or whatever, because in the Navy, I mean, they figure the guys aren't manly enough unless they're smoking cigars or whatever, cigarettes.
And I guess, getting back to the topic of history, back in the 60s, the information about how bad cigarettes were
Yeah.
or how bad tobacco was
Your
covered
doc-
up,
yes.
reduced,
And-
and even saying that there were health benefits to smoking to make it more socially acceptable.
And they even had physicians or actors portraying physicians that said your physicians even recommend this type of cigarette or whatever.
Right.
No one said anything, but it was never a draw. So when someone says they're addicted, I say I'm not getting that, because we were in a house that my dad had smoke, and there was no draw to it. No
Now,
draw.
I'm no scientist, but I have heard more recent studies that say that the propensity to become addicted is perhaps genetic. So more people are likely to become addicted than others. I can tell you that I didn't feel like it was free will for 19 years to keep smoking. There were many times during that period where I wanted to quit, but it was a lot more complicated than just not buying that next pack of cigarettes.
And so even with the cigarettes, that's one step. We're the family are not. We don't indulge with liquor. I mean, maybe wine. With dinner, maybe or maybe not. But we. So that's not it. But I worry about the younger generation with these drug addictions, that once they taste that heroin or that pot or whatever it is,
Right.
they can't get their head stabilized. So how can we teach them anything? And you've got such wonderful books here.
Yeah.
I wish you should pick up a couple so we can talk
Well,
about that.
These are newer books that have come out. This is actually a book on Malcolm X by Manny Marable, and it actually was a 2013 Pulitzer winner in the history category.
Wow.
So I just picked it up today. So
Okay.
Didn't
have a chance to read it.
I haven't had a chance to read
Okay,
it.
didn't have a
but
chance to read
we
it.
know that Malcolm X fought for the struggle of civil rights.
Civil rights, okay.
But the misinformation during the time is that he was a hoodlum or a thug and just
A rabble-rouser.
a rabble rouser.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the misinformation that was going on at the time. Another book that's caught my interest recently is the name is Ebony and Ivy. I'm not sure if you've heard of this one.
No.
But it actually looks at what role colleges and universities played in building up the whole industry of slavery,
Really?
going back before 1600 or during the 1600s and before we had signed our Declaration of Independence, and how that made slavery such a strong part of our culture, which also leads into a lot of the misconceptions that people have about black people. Back then we were called Negroes, which I mentioned in my little short essay. I go
Yes.
Negroes
Slash
slash
black,
because on my birth certificate it says that I'm Negro, and that is just what
Is that
people.
necessary? Was that necessary to put on?
I don't know. They didn't ask me at the time. I was
Oh,
newborn.
okay. Okay.
But I remember the realization that we wanted to be identified differently as a people with the civil rights movement
Movement.
reaching its peak in the late 60s, and James Brown coming out with a song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and then all of a sudden we were blacks.
Well-
And it was okay to be called black,
Okay.
which before then had been perhaps a little taboo, but then evolving now into what's more comfortable for people is to call ourselves African American.
African American. Well, whatever the name on there, you are human.
Right.
Human being. That is the name. Human being. No two ways
Absolutely.
about it.
So,
Yeah, and you've got another book over there that I thought was very interesting.
well,
The-
this one is
Forgotten.
the Forgotten History of America.
yeah.
Am I holding it
That-
up
yeah,
to the
you're
right
good.
camera?
You're good.
And this is also a relatively new publication that talks about the period, in the 1600s and moving forward, about the stories that they forgot to put in the history books. A lot of them are, not the pretty side of America, where, Indians were slaughtered,
Terrible,
and
yeah.
by today's terminology, we would call it genocide, but it was part of, they identified clearly what the Christian movement was in spreading Christianity and pushing that agenda, and then how that becomes ingrained into the whole racial stereotype about the white superior race, and it's their mission from God to domain over the mental weaklings, which were people of color.
Did you find any, going through school, going through college, did you find any feelings of, other students having different feelings towards you as a student, or were you considered, as you should be, a student and there for an education?
People are people, and I met many really good people when I was at Purdue University. I didn't make as close connections when I was at Indiana University Northwest, because it's a community college. People kind of come in and go out. But at Purdue, I have friends that I established of all races that I still keep in contact with today. And actually have been able to reunite with some of them through Facebook and
Hey, very
those
good.
devices.
I haven't learned how to do that yet, but I think soon I will learn how.
Right. So when you mention, my experience at college, I was probably pretty easygoing and not really paying that much attention to the experience that was happening at the time. And sometimes people would have to shake me and tell me what just happened.
Hey, Larry, did you see what went on? Did you see what went on?
But when I got to college, I was really impressed by the fact that I could go to fraternity during their rush period, and they served free beer. It was fun for me. So I was, having a good time meeting people, and then at the end of rush, they go around and they give bids to people. I didn't realize that I actually entered the formal rush until someone came up and said, "Larry, I'm so sorry, but we decided not to let you into our fraternity." And I was not heartbroken at all, because I didn't know that I was actually rushing.
Right.
But that was an all-white fraternity at the time, and it's probably changed since then. But that was probably one example of me not being able to cross
For
that invisible color barrier.
Yeah. the barrier.
Another impression that sticks with me today was an instructor that I had for business writing. And I wrote a paper, turned it in, and there were some minor errors in it. It was back in the days where we actually didn't have word processors. We had to use a typewriter.
Oh, this generation doesn't even know what a typewriter is.
Right.
And they don't even know what it means to write. I have been told that cursive writing is out, and they want the kids to print.
Right.
That's
But this instructor took my paper, and the feedback that he gave to me on maybe one or two minor errors. He said, "Larry, this is a great paper. I can see that, you're good at writing, But let me tell you this, and he was a Caucasian. He said, an error on your paper, if it was anybody else, would just be an error. But if it's on your paper, people are going to think you're illiterate. And
Wow.
I know.
Wow,
but
what is that?
he was being truthful. And I found that in the world of work, that sometimes the fact that you walk in with your color, which you can't
Hey,
disguise,
it doesn't wash off.
people just make assumptions in their head that you are there because of some affirmative action. And then they're surprised to find out that, oh, you've got a master's degree? Oh, I didn't realize that.
You're smart.
Right.
That's it. You're smart. Maybe to put them to shame because they don't have that far of an education. Maybe they just have a Bachelor of Arts, or Bachelor of Science. They don't know.
Right, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I did the work, to get where
Where you are,
the things that I
absolutely.
achieved in life.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to get credit for that work that you did. My most interesting experience was when I started at Citibank or Citicorp Services. Right after I got my master's degree, the first thing they wanted me to do was to fill up a cup.
What?
And the urine test. They
Oh,
started
geez,
drug testing.
that
I
drug
go,
testing.
wait a minute, don't you want me to prove that I actually got my degree? No, they're
No,
like, no, it's
they
just a
don't
drug test that we're interested in.
Gee, that's demeaning in itself. I'm telling you.
It is.
That's really terrible. You have to be better than everybody because you have to constantly prove yourself. That's a terrible thing to have to prove yourself. You're there because you are qualified.
Right.
I mean, that's no two ways about it. You're qualified, you're a human being, and you're there. No, so that's it. I mean, that's the way it should be.
Right.
I'm interested in the fact that there are so many laws that are going into place. Half of them in the state of Illinois, nobody follows. I mean, but they're on the books and they're federal laws. Is there anything that distinguishes you as far as education-wise? Here in Illinois, I mean, can you teach the insurance business? Can you teach? You've got a master's.
Right.
What does that equate to for you?
Well, in the role of teaching, I mean, I don't know, but I think if I applied to a university, I could probably teach a course. I had actually friends from Abbott Laboratories when I was there who would do night courses at some of the community universities. So definitely I'm qualified by the credential.
Yeah.
But the teaching that I do is more with the one-on-one, sitting down with families and working through the issues that they have and helping them reach the goals that are important to them, sending their kids to college, being able to afford that, showing them a few money tricks to get their ducks in order for that.
And that's incredible because in this day and age, how do you know where to put things? How do you know, we come to you because you've got your thumb on the heartbeat, on the pulse of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Because John Q. Public has no idea what's going up, stocks are going down. We don't know how to play this game, Lair.
Well, stop listening to the media would be my biggest bit of advice.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
I look at television as entertainment, and I don't think there's a lot of good education for people to make lifelong decisions there. I think you do better when you have a coach, and that's what I do, for a living. So when I'm talking and educating my clients about what happens in the stock market when they see the carnival start with rising and falling prices, they don't get into a panic mode because I've walked them through that, helped them visualize that before it actually happens.
Now, people that are watching this on cable, they say, hey, this gentleman is pretty sharp from how we hear him talk, how his appearance. He's, we might want to connect with him to help teach us or show us what to do. Are you willing to connect with church groups or school groups or senior citizens or whoever, whatever, if they feel that they need?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So how would they get in contact with you? What is, do you have a website, or you have a number where they could reach you? Or
I do. I don't think you have a visual for this, so.
Well, you can tell it. We can hear.
It's www.primerica.com. So that's primerica.com/Larry Chambers.
Okay.
And that takes you directly to my site, tells you a little bit about my business, and gives you an opportunity
there
to
you
actually
go.
send a note
There you
to
go.
me. Wow.
That was good.
Technology, it's amazing.
Yeah, and amazing is so they could because we don't know how to really manage the monies because they say the stock the market is crashing. That we don't know.
Well, there are a lot of players in the financial services industry. Some of them gear their products toward a single line of business. Maybe it's just an insurance company. So they don't look at the whole picture. So their objective is to sell as much insurance as they can
Insurance.
and to make as much profit as they can. So the actual job of matching the right insurance to the right client becomes less of a priority for them than when my business, our model
Yeah.
is to look at a person's financial placement, where they are now and where they want to go, and then match whatever products we have available to help them stay on track. Because if I'm developing a long-term relationship with you,
Yeah.
You've got to be moving ahead financially to see the value in actually sitting down with me.
Sure. So maybe a school, and you're up here. You're in on the North Shore. Maybe one of the junior high schools says, "Hey, we saw Larry Chambers on a cable program, and we would like to have him come to the school and explain to the 8th graders how important it is to be able to invest your money so that you could see a return on that." And Larry, I don't think it's too early for the kids to.
Absolutely not.
I mean, the technology is so advanced. Like I can do email, but that's about it. I mean, because I push a button and then it goes to cyberspace, and I never find it after that. So, but nowadays, I mean, I don't know how to do the text thing. I can't do that.
Right.
But I think academically, the kids need to know financial status and how they are, where they are, and how they got there,
Right.
how their parents got there.
Absolutely. Our approach is to focus on simplifying things. And I went through, I used program in business and Purdue's program
Yeah.
in business, and I had maybe a vague recollection of what they call the Rule of 72. And I don't know if you're familiar
I
with
don't know
it,
that. I'm sorry.
but it's a very simple rule. But the key thing that you want to remember is that your money can double. Whatever money you have, if it's $1,000, it can double. But how fast is it going to double? So this rule of 72 helps us with that, because if you take the interest rate that you earn or that the bank is paying you, and you divide that interest rate into 72, it tells you the number of years. So a popular interest rate right now at the banks is about 1%. So that means that
Not too popular. 1% is not too popular. I mean,
not
so
at all,
it's-
because when you divide that into 72, it means it's going to take 72 years to double your money.
Holy moly.
So my 22-year-old daughter would be 94, but
see.
if the rate of return were more like 10%, that would be 7 years instead of 72. So understanding that would make you not even look twice at a bank that's offering you 1%, and to
1%.
think that you've got any kind of security or chance of moving ahead with that.
So my granddaughter is now, I think, in 5th grade. No, maybe it's 6th grade, junior high, 6th grade. So maybe they would be smart in teaching the kids either 6th, 7th, or 8th grade how to manage money
Right.
and how to invest it wisely. And, you know, not only that, but that would kind of give them an incentive, not, you know, academically, not to want to go off the deep end with a drug kind of situation, because the investing would give them money and give them a feeling of worth.
Right. Oh, self-worth.
Yeah, that's right. That's
And
right.
you know, perhaps I don't have a lot of exposure to drug culture, but perhaps people are looking for something, whatever that something is, trying to find
You know,
something
it's
to root themselves with.
it's really pathetic, because these are good people that could be better, and instead of being better, they just go down the tubes and figure, why try, because this is going to give me a high and I don't care about anybody. And then they're the ones at the short end of the stick then, you know. The youngsters coming out of school, or if they drop out of school, that's so bad, Larry. It's
Right.
so bad, because then they don't have a future.
It's funny when you mention the dropout of high school. As I was saying, many of my aunts and uncles probably never made it past the 8th grade. But it's not that they didn't value education, but they always carried themselves with a sense of respect. Whereas if you saw them on any given Sunday when, you know, people dressed up to go to church, you couldn't tell the lawyer from the laborer, because people had that sense of pride in themselves and presentation.
That's
So-
very important. You know, we now in the 21st century, we were fighting against the drugs, and everybody says, well, it's like prohibition, and you know, because they kept it away from the public, people were going to speakeasies. That was before my time, I need to tell you that. But this is what I hear. And so they were getting it, you know, bathtub gin, they were making it, whatever. So now the government, you know, let up on that, and then the alcohol became a part of America. And of course everybody was taxed on it. But the drugs, we're finding that to be more detrimental than alcohol or cigarettes, because this is something that puts someone's frame of mind out of control. And they don't know where they're at. They don't know what they're doing. And, you know, they could miss a test that could boost them into the, you know, working or professionalism that they would be. Who is going to hire somebody who's a drug addict? They're not going to get a job at the, you know, the bank on the corner.
Well, that's true, especially with drug testing up
See?
front.
Well,
You're
they
never
hand
gonna
them
get
the
through
cup.
door.
Here you go, babe. Have a pee in the cup, you know, which is so demeaning. But, you know, a lot of these places, if you've got millions of dollars going through there, and you've got a clientele that, the clientele might be drug addicts,
Well, that's
but they've got their money in your bank.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, drugs affect every class, so I think, you know, we can't just say that it's affecting, you know, the disadvantaged class.
no, up here on the
But-
North Shore, I'm telling you, people aren't telling what goes on behind their doors, but you can see by the attitude they are or have, if they're not thinking right or whatever. And you can't tell them they can't smoke or do this stuff, because we have a law that says they can do it for medicinal purposes.
Right. And perhaps they can, and perhaps there's a legitimate reason for using it
Probably,
for
maybe.
medicinal
Okay.
purposes. But if you give someone something else to be interested in, something
is
that
it.
actually gives them
A
value,
future,
right?
a value. That's right,
So-
value in a future.
So if they become fascinated with building robots, you know, maybe that becomes their drug. Maybe
Yeah.
that becomes their obsession, rather than
Their addiction, they
Right.
like that. And
Right now, my son's addiction is Xbox. We're trying to fix that.
Xbox.
Yes.
Oh, forget that, babe. We're through that or whatever. But the information is that education comes from reading. Education comes from, unfortunately, life struggles, and people write books, and the books are meant to be read. And if they can't read the books, the technology nowadays, go online and read it.
Right. You can go online. You can have the tablet readers. It's so much more accessible to get
Yes.
a wide range of information
Yes.
than it was when we both were growing up.
And listen, not only that, and it doesn't necessarily even mean because it's Black History Month and you have to be black. Look what happened with the Polish people, or the Irish people, or the Italian people, or whatever classification, what group they came from Europe. They came here, and they made a life for themselves.
Right.
And it was very important for them to teach the children education.
Right.
And we have a lot of, on the Supreme Court, a lot of people that their background was from Eastern Europe, and Thurgood Marshall. Look at that. I mean, we had wonderful people that we could learn from their history, but nobody taps them on the shoulder and says, "Hey, what's your background? Where'd you come from? How'd your life happen? Where were your parents? Where were your grandparents? We would like to know your information." I think that in and of itself is very informative, very educational, and you can learn, Larry.
Right.
You
I
can
think the
learn.
biggest threat that we have now, and I sit down and I see people just becoming discouraged with the perception that college is now out of reach. The price has gone up significantly since I was in school, and I think people are getting a little bit frustrated with the fact that they just give up before they even try to even get into a school.
Is it because it's so daunting? Is it the financial, or is it because of the education that they didn't really make the cut? They didn't make the grade on their SATs or any of that stuff, huh? How do you get it?
I think too much weight is given to SATs as being a barrier to getting into school. Everybody's not going to go to Harvard, and that's a good thing. Because there's so many more schools available to you. I mean, there's online colleges and
True.
Where you can get a decent education that can give you a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree.
That's true.
You don't have to give up on everything because you perhaps had only focused on one thing and found that was financially unattainable for you.
But there are kids that if they don't make an A that they're used to, and they happen to slide into a B slot, they go berserk. They're so keyed onto making being a student. But the world is run with C students all over the world.
That's called average.
And
Yeah.
that is correct.
Right.
And we don't place average with color. We place average with just doing the job.
Right.
And getting it done. There are presidents of banks and universities that are C students. They are C students, but yet they promote an A, an A academic for the students coming into the university. They strive to do that, but there's so many ethnicities out there. I don't know if there's February is Black History Month. Is there a Asian month? I don't know. Is May or June an Asian? I've never heard of it before.
I'm not going to say that there isn't Asian History Month.
I've not heard that.
But I think Black History Month is really important to this country.
Because you're American. Because you built America.
Actually, Black History Month is also celebrated in the UK.
Oh, didn't know that. Hey, that's something I didn't know.
So it goes beyond our country. And maybe it's the countries that were affected by slavery, because the truth if you look at our history as it's becoming revealed, is that the country was built on the backs of slaves. And if you look at Harvard's history up to about 10 years ago, there's no mention of slavery. But the first 7 presidents at Harvard each had slaves. And they had slaves on the campus at Harvard to keep the food service running, to take care of the rooms and other things that made the university run. And
Lawn,
they
housekeeping.
they actually trained students, their graduates, to go into the South to build up plantations. And so those plantations are the fruit of Harvard knowledge. But the university is built up on, that work of slaves. So when do they get paid?
Yeah.
So that's why we have to keep reminding ourselves about that history, because we're learning more about not just the roles that blacks played, but the true roles that our founding fathers had in the whole picture of that course of history.
Every ethnicity and religion have been put to the test.
Mm-hmm.
And although February being Black History Month, we absolutely admire with pride and honor the hardships, true hardships of the culture coming true to light. I mean, from whence they came to how we are today.
Right.
But the Christians were. I mean, look at history. How the Romans, what they did with the Christians, and the Jewish population during World War II with Hitler, and I mean, everyone, and when we were at war with Japan, the concentration camps with the Japanese, the internment camps.
You mentioned Asian American History Month,
and
that's an interesting idea, but what about our Native Americans?
Yes.
And what about a History Month for them? Because I
Yes.
think that they have also gotten the short end of the stick.
Yes, unfortunate.
And there's not many of them left to speak because of the mass killings that went on, which is a horrible part of our history that no one really wants to take a good look at. And if you look at how we perceive history, we learned history a little bit differently when we were growing up than the history that's being presented now. And for instance, we've got our old movies like Gone with the Wind to tell us a little bit about history, but compare that to the most recent movie, 12 Years a Slave, to look at what a slave's life was really like. And have you seen that movie?
I've not seen that. I've heard it was absolutely wonderful.
It was a wonderful presentation of our true history, but it is a difficult film to watch.
Hard.
And it was hard for me to say that anyone in that theater was not touched by the story told on the screen.
You have 2 more books. We don't have much time left, but
Okay.
2 more books. I want the public to know that there is an education out there, and not to just, pass this by.
Right. One of the books in my personal library is this Civil Rights Chronicle, and I'm not sure that it's in print. I actually got this at a school book sale. And
You're lucky.
It's a fascinating story of our chronicle, and it goes back into the 1700s and then takes us all the way forward into our modern day with a lot of pictures. I have a love for photography, and the story couldn't be better told without,
Well,
these images.
the illustration and pictures, there are some people that get the idea by reading, and there are a lot of people who like to look at the pictures because that stays the longest in their mind of what they've seen.
Right.
And to see something like that,
Right. You can talk about a lynching, or you can talk about someone who had their back with lashes on it, but when you see the image, it does stay with you, more than the words do.
Now, and that's caught up to time? That's up to this day and age?
Yes, it's up to, I believe, maybe 2000.
Okay.
So,
Civil Rights
within
Chronicle.
right.
Okay.
And then we have a history of Gary, and I doubt that anyone can find this book. It was published in 1981, but it has some wonderful pictures of what Gary was, and not much of what it's become. And the fascinating thing is that Gary was a bustling city. And if you've driven through it in the past 10 years, you would think that perhaps I was doing drugs before I came on the program. But the streets were crowded. There were buses that were running up and down the street. And there was, streets lined with productive businesses. But the city was fueled by the steel mills, which kept it going.
Yeah.
But there was an element of racism in the culture there, and segregation as well. And things started to break down after our biggest victory, which was to have the first black, he was black, not African American yet. Mayor Richard Hatcher,
Yeah.
who took over as mayor in, I believe, '68. Right around the times when there was a lot of social turmoil.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when the city went from being a mixed city to evolving into pretty much a all-black city.
Right.
Within probably 7 years, it was that quick
Gotcha.
that the exodus happened.
Wow. And I wonder if those stores are there, if...
I got this at a local bookstore when I was still working in Gary, and so that's why I'm not sure that it would be still in print, but it's Gary, A Pictorial History by James B. Lane and Ronald D. Cohen. So.
Well, on the back it says dentist. You could have been a dentist, Larry. That would have been a good idea. You could have been.
I could have been.
Yeah,
or judge.
I could go to you. Yeah, sure, why not? Well, we don't have much time left, just about a minute. I'm so happy you came. I'm so happy you gave us information and educated the public, our public out there, for whatever it's worth. Take it as an education. Do see what you can read on the forgotten history of America, and stay away from drugs. We'll say that for everybody. And if you're interested, please give Larry Chambers a call, because he deals with insurance, and you could see that again. What the your insurance is.
Right, life insurance, auto and home, also investing for the future.
Good. That would be great. Well, we want to thank you so much again for coming on the program.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're a super guy. Super guy. Thank you for allowing us.